Hygiene throughout human history. Prehistoric times. In prehistoric times, hygiene was basically non-existent. While we can't be 100% sure of what hygiene routines prehistoric humans had, since they weren't exactly writing down their 8-step skincare routine, we can probably assume hygiene is the least of your concerns when you gotta worry about being eaten by a bear in your sleep. It can be assumed though that early humans used water to clean themselves, since most ancient humans lived near a source of one. Also, shaving existed, with ancient humans using sharpened obsidian and clamshells to shave themselves 60,000 years ago. In fact, there's even cave paintings of beardless men. They also did probably pluck parasites off their body and took poops away from where they slept, which seems less like hygiene and more like not wanting to sleep in your own poop. But okay, I guess we'll count it. One article also stated ancient humans burying their dead could count as a form of hygiene, which we're really scraping the bottom of the barrel, okay? And that probably had to do more with ancient humans not wanting to see their dead aunties. But whatever, we'll count it. Overall, in a time before showers, soaps, perfume, deodorant, there really wasn't much you could do to cover up your stink. Bronze Age civilizations. With the rise of ancient civilizations, we finally get some which people would actually consider as hygiene. Ancient Mesopotamia. In general, in ancient Mesopotamia, your hygiene was better than that of a prehistoric man. I mean, it still heavily depended on your social class, but let's say you were at the top of the hierarchy in Mesopotamia. What would that offer you? Well, there was dental care, kind of. The Mesopotamians cleaned their teeth using a chew stick, which is a stick they would stick up their ass. I'm kidding. It was a chew stick, they would chew on it, and this was supposed to remove plaque and clean their teeth. Now, I was pretty skeptical if a chew stick even did anything, so I searched up if chew sticks were viable or if this was just big chew stick propaganda. And no, turns out chew sticks are just as efficient as toothbrushes. Anyway, Mesopotamians also figured out sewer systems. It's really crazy how much we take sewage for granted, because before Mesopotamians, you would just poop in a hole and hope you wouldn't step in it later. But now, with the all-new invention of sanitation canals, your poop would be magically transported away from your home into a giant pit. You know, still an improvement. But if you think a tunnel which transports your poop away from your home isn't impressive, you ain't seen nothing yet, buddy. Because next, we travel to the Indus River Valley, which, despite India being the epicenter of smelly people, including me, I'm Indian, it was actually a pretty hygienic place for its time. That's because not only did the Indus have waste disposal like the Mesopotamians, but also they had community baths. Now, these were more for ritual reasons, but most city houses also had indoor baths and bathrooms. And this whole thing is possible because of a plumbing system so ahead of its time, it wouldn't be matched until the ancient Romans 2,500 years later. And more importantly, both ancient Indians and Greek civilizations also figured out boiling water is an easy way to not die. So, you know, good on you, Indus River Valley. And the final Bronze Age civilization I will talk about is the ancient Egyptians. These guys were so clean, they give most people today a run for their money. Not only did they have the chew sticks, they had the plumbing, kind of. It was another one of those cases where the poop pit leaks into the drinking water, but you know, it's okay, because they also had deodorant, perfume, and mirrors. I know, crazy stuff. A lot of Egyptians also opted to go bald, because no hair equals no lice. And then wigs were worn by the elite. And to really drive the point as to how clean the Egyptians were, let me introduce to you a man named Sinui. Now, this guy might not be real, honestly, but he does give an insight into what hygiene was like for the Egyptian elite. He said he was shaved, then he was combed, in that order, so I don't know what they combed if they shaved, but whatever. Then he was bathed by servants, pouring water over him, then lathering him in some aromatic oil. Then they put on some myrrh, which was like ancient perfume, and then he was given fine linen clothes. Obviously, his experience was probably not representative of most ancient Egyptians, but it does show they were pretty clean. Iron and classical age. The Assyrians had it all. They had impressive military feats, and they were considered the strongest empire during the Iron Age. But don't let this distract you from the fact that Assyrian hygiene was, not great. I mean, it wasn't terrible, and honestly, the ancient Egyptians set the bar way too high, but the Assyrians kinda just had that same old plumbing and chewing on stick routine. And I will take points off for the Assyrian Empire, because while some of these older empires had public sewer systems for the large percentage of people, toilets were, for some reason, a luxury to Assyrians. with the common man shitting into the open farmland. A problem because that's how cholera spreads. The ancient Chinese were also pretty smelly. The average Chinese man during the Qin and Han dynasty went without a shower for 5 days and would go without washing his hair for 3 days. And that's because the northern part of China was so cold, every time a man showered in the freezing water, he would catch sickness. And so this idea of not showering consistently spread to the rest of China. This 4-day stink, 5th day shower was so ingrained into Chinese culture, it was a national holiday during the Han dynasty that both nobility and commoners would enjoy, with a shower at a communal bathhouse. The ancient Greeks, on the other hand, had a whole different perspective. See, while today, unless you're getting lucky, you probably don't have a reason to shower with someone, back in ancient Greece, showering butt booty naked in front of people was not only a thing everybody was comfortable with, it was ingrained into their society. That's because bathhouses were more than just places to shower. They were also a place to socialize with each other. So basically, if you had a super hot neighbor, it was a good time to be an ancient Greek. I'm just kidding, you only bathe with your own gender, with women having their own separate bathhouses earlier in the day and men taking their showers later. Ironically, the bathhouses probably started to do more harm than good for the ancient Greek, at least when it came to hygiene, because the doctor's best cure for whoever was sick was to go take a shower in a communal house, which would mean that your fever that you were dealing with is now also everyone else in the bathhouse's fever. They were also not fans of soap. I mean, soap did exist in ancient Greece, but the Greeks instead chose to clean their bodies with a mixture of olive oil and sand, and then they would scrape it all off with a tool called a strigil. The Romans followed many of the same principles that the Greeks did. They too had massive communal baths called thermae, which had heated water and massive rooms with intricate mosaic art. And they also used olive oil and sand and scraped it all off with a strigil. They did other stuff too, like build these massive aqueducts, which dealt with the poop water problem. And on the topic of poop, after taking one, the Romans would clean their butts with a torsurium, which was basically a poop sponge. It was a sea sponge on a stick, which people used like toilet paper. To be clear, this was not disposable and the sponge was communal. Now this is actually my second time talking about this poop sponge, and I'm still in awe as to why Romans chose to use this. Like, out of all the things that could be communal, this is like the one thing that should stay individual. No one should essentially have to share toilet paper. Middle Ages and Renaissance. After the Romans got galled into just the Byzantines, Western Europe in general went through a massive depression phase. Now, I'm not going to be talking about any specific kingdom. Instead, I'm just going to cover what the average medieval peasant's hygiene was like. So when you think Middle Ages, you're probably thinking that hygiene was terrible. Well, actually, it turns out that you're completely right. It was horrible. The one reprisal to peasant hygiene was that showering every day was pretty much mandatory, since they would always be dirty and grimy from their work. As for toilets, if you were a lower class, there was no such thing. Instead, there was the poop bucket, which got dumped into a nearby river and gave free flavoring for everyone downstream. Or it would get dumped into a cesspit, which leaked into groundwater. Basically, there was no way around drinking poop water. And then there was the biggest hygiene problem that peasants had to deal with, which was parasites. The hay they slept on was infested with fleas, their hair was infested with lice, their ex-wife was yapping about needing a new wimple. I mean, there was parasites everywhere you looked in peasant life. And finally, I'll cover dental hygiene, an issue that peasants didn't really have to deal with, since most of their diet did not have much natural sugar to give them cavities anyway. But if they did have teeth problems, they would head over to the dentist, who would also be their barber, and probably get a taper fade, line up their beard, and then have an impromptu root canal, usually while being absolutely wasted so they didn't have to deal with the pain. Unlike Western Europe, other places actually saw an increase in hygiene. The Byzantines had similar practices to the Greeks and Romans with their communal baths, and also created the first hospitals. They also brushed their teeth 2 times a day using white wine as a cleaning agent. Over in the Middle East, they were going through a golden age. And just like the Romans, they were also a fan of public baths, probably because they were inspired by the Romans. Their baths were called hammams, and just like the Roman and Greeks, they were massive heated bathhouses with toiletries, perfumes, combs, and all the other great things. And finally, I would love to talk about the Western African empires, but I couldn't find anything on them, so maybe they were just deodorant only gang, who knows. Circling back to Europe, by the time the Renaissance started happening, hygiene started to get kind of better. First of all, plumbing was finally back in vogue. I mean, the poop still directly went into the drinking water. This seems to be a a recurring problem, but you know what? It's still an improvement. The people of the Renaissance had also made a massive discovery in hygiene. See, what if instead of cleaning the body, they just changed their clothes every day, and then all the sweat and oils and all the stuff that makes us smell gets soaked up in these clothes. So basically, just change your clothes every day, take a shower like every weekish, and you should be good. Now today, we would call this logic as extremely stupid, but back then they thought they had it figured out. In middle school, I thought this worked too. Turns out that no, you still smell, and the Renaissance people were just extremely wrong. But yeah, people in the Renaissance had stopped bathing together for the most part. In fact, people just stopped bathing in general. Instead, they would just wash their hands and face only, comb their beards and hair, and use herbal washes to smell better. We are now in the Victorian era. The idea of washing your arms and face are still pretty common, but now people are bathing again. I mean, they haven't gotten up to daily showers yet, but you know what? They're working on it. There was also technological advancements like the gas-heated bath, which went about as well as you would expect. A lot of people got burnt alive. But anyway, if you were a Victorian, you probably did smell good if you were the higher class. The lower class probably still smelled like dog shit, but screw them. They don't even matter. Let's talk about rich people. They had perfumes, scented powders, which was basically just deodorant. And if you wanted to poop, the rich now had toilets. Alright, enough about rich people. They honestly were pretty hygienic. How about poor people? Well, if you were poor and wanted to take a poop, you would have to use a chamber pot, which was basically just a cup you'd poop in. And it really looked like fine china, which makes me think that someone definitely accidentally cooked a casserole in one of these. But aside from that, there was basically no tap water during the Victorian era. There was tap water, but you were more likely to hit green in roulette than not get cholera from drinking this water. So your best bet was instead to get wasted on alcohol, which is what a lot of the population was doing around this time. The poop water issue was so bad, and the River Thames stank so bad, there was a historical event called the Great Stink of 1858. And it's really ironic because Britain basically owned most of the world at the time, but they just couldn't stop shitting in their main river. And now their entire city of London smelled like poop because everyone kept pooping in the river. Yeah, so it was a bad time for the British. In other news, toothbrush and toothpaste and toilet paper are all now common. And honestly, if you were rich in the Victorian era, you'd be pretty hygienic compared to modern standards. Modern age. So what's changed in the last 100 years or so? Large-scale vaccination has become a thing. Germ theory got popularized, which means doctors will wash their hands before doing open heart surgery. People start to become more aware of showering daily. HEPA filters now exist, so now your air is purified. And now you can wake up, brush your teeth, floss your teeth, take a shower, drink clean water, go to a hospital, and overall, live a pretty good life. So that's hygiene throughout history. Hopefully you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, comment any video ideas. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.